Visually, take the farthest point on your setting and just trace around both ends. You could also use the scribe if you want. Just so long as you can see that 4 millimeter inside. Now we're going to add another millimeter or a half to this so that we have a tab on either end. And that's going to be what holds this to our cuff bracelet. Put a mark in the middle of where you're going to drill. And I'm on the base plate, not on the bench peg. The bench peg is wood, and if you try to put your mark in it on the wood, it dents the metal. So always mark it on the base plate. Use a 1 millimeter drill bit. Drill a hole at each one of those spots. Hold your saw on your chest and on the end of your bench peg. Thread your saw blade through. Lean against the saw to tension it, tighten it, and saw out very carefully that inside mark. Make this very pretty because it's going to be very visible. At this point, if you look at it from the back, you'll see these two D-shaped holes. So don't make it round where it goes next to the base for the cabochon. Make it so that it is a D shape. So take your round jeweler's file at this point, either a number 2 or a number 4 cut, and you're just going to brace this against your bench peg. And make that hole nice and pretty. You may have to work from the top to be able to see correctly. And when you get the round part done, take your barrette file, which has safe edges and back, and there are only teeth on the front, and you're going to use just the very first part of that to tidy up the hole next to the base. So do both ends. Take a set of dividers, set the distance at 2.5, and then you're going to put one end inside the hole, and you're just going to drag this around, and when you get finished you'll have a mark that is 2.5 millimeters outside your regular hole. So at this point we're going to cut on that mark and within 0.5 millimeter of the outside edge of our bezel. When you're cutting next to the bezel, be careful that you don't actually touch the bezel, which is why we're leaving 0.5 millimeter. Go all the way around. So that's roughly what it looks like at this point from the back. So take your number 2 cut flat hand file, and this is where you tidy up the edge of your bezel and where the base touches the bezel. Just hold it in your fingers. File just until it touches there. Don't go past that point, so don't thin out the bezel. When you get to your tab, use the safe edge, which is just a smooth edge with no teeth, against the tab and come back Yep. And then tidy up your tab. You can also use your flat hand file for that. Go all the way around and then use your sanding stick with 400 grade paper on it. And when you tidy up the join on your bezel, you shouldn't be able to see any join at all, full stop. Now at this point, if this top edge is a little bit out of shape, means out of level, you can put it back on your bench plate, put that edge down, scrub it back and forth. Don't put the stone in. Once you solder the bezel onto the base, you never put the stone in until you're completely finished. Okay? Now the way this is going to work is this is going to sit on your hand and you're going to have the wire bezel that it's attached to. So the easy way to do this is to just run the wire around your wrist until it gets to either end of this, and happily that's about 150 mil, but check it a couple of times from end around your wrist to end. And then for our loop we're going to have to add about 20 millimeters on either end, because you know the diameter of a circle plus the thickness of the wire times 3.14, and that'll tell you how much you need on either end. So I did my rough length. I added 20 mil on either end, and we're going to mark that spot with a Sharpie texture, as long as it's a permanent marker. Now we're going to forge this to half its thickness. Use the rounded end of a planishing hammer. Make sure it's nice and shiny. Your bench block or your anvil. So hammer this down until it's 1.5 thick. Right from the mark, do the whole length. Now by hammering this, it's spread this out to 5 mil wide. File it back until it's the same thickness as your wire. Just brace it against your bench peg. Use your number 2 cut flat hand file. So right back until it's 3 millimeters. Straighten your wire, mark the middle, make sure the ends are flat, and push it around your oval bracelet mandrel. Slide it down to the size you want. Use your rawhide hammer to form it. So that's roughly what we want to start with. Now take your flat round pliers, and on this one the round bit goes on the outside, and you're going to go to the largest part of the pliers in the middle of your flat part, and you're going to bend that up 90 degrees. Do the other end, up 90 degrees. And at this point, we need to check to see that that is the right size for our setting. So at this point, you can modify it. Chances are it's too long. It's quite easy to hammer a little bit more clip this to size, reform it around your bracelet mandrel. And once it's the right size, then we'll put a bit of a C shape, and we're not going to close it down. We're just going to have a C shape so that we can take this off and replace it with another piece. If you wanted to make it permanent, you'd close your loop right down so it touches the bracelet and leave this one into a C shape for a hook. Okay, if it's the right size, take your round pliers, and that is about all you need. Now we're going to cut that with our saw and file it to shape. So I'm still at the big end of my pliers. Trim that and make it pretty. Tidy this up with your 400 grade paper and your sanding stick. Check it to make sure there aren't any rude marks in it. If it's precious metal, hallmark it now. And the reason that both pieces are hallmarked is because they're not joined together. Yes, so that is our bracelet with our removable stone. Now, at this point, this will be polished and ready to set the stone. You can polish this one. When you're ready to set the stone, take your number 2 cut flat hand file and file a 45-degree angle on the top edge of the stone. Don't hit the tab with the side of the file. Top edge of the bezel, sorry. And that's just to thin the edge a little bit so it's easier to push over the stone. Now we're ready to set it. Clean your bench peg, make sure there's no ugly bits on it. Put your setting on there, and this is the first time that you will have put the stone back in the setting. So push it right to the bottom. Have a look, make sure it's set nice. You can tap it with the wooden handle. And we're just going to hold this bezel rocker at a 90-degree angle and push the edge of the bezel over onto the stone. And because it's fine silver, it'll push over quite easily, so I'm just pushing against my fingers. Try not to slip and put rude marks in the middle. So when you've gone all the way around at a 45-degree angle, rest the edge of the bezel rocker right on the top edge of the middle and go around again, and this should push the bezel right against the stone. Now when you've done that, take your burnisher and you're just going to push against yourself and rub the top edge of the bezel, and you should be able to see a little shiny line all the way around. That pushes the bezel over the final amount, and it actually polishes and hardens the bezel. So once you get that done, your piece will be finished. I know this is copper, but I didn't have any silver to do the demo. Yep. Done deal. I like it.